Hello. Welcome to my channel to anyone who is new, and welcome back to returning subscribers. Before I get on with the video, I just want to give a short thanks to everyone who supported my last video. I assumed the video would get 50 or maybe if I was lucky, 100 views, but I'm glad to see that I've gotten 2,000 views. I put a lot of thought into that video and I'm glad my efforts paid off. I have a few other videos in the works that I want to give the same amount of time and care, but because of my offline responsibilities, working on this project has become much harder. So as a video to appease YouTube so it doesn't forget about me, I decided to make this video, What Makes Something Scary, which will hopefully come out in October. This video probably won't get as much attention as the last few, but I'll be sure to give it the same amount of effort. With that out the way, let's get into the subject. So, what makes something scary? You may be thinking of weird bugs, some sort of demonic creature, or maybe an aesthetic. I would say these are all good candidates for creepy things, but I wouldn't really call them scary. Creepy things are things we think are disturbing because we don't understand them, and scary things are benign things that only become disturbing once we understand them. For example, I think we can all remember a time when we were afraid of the monster underneath our bed. Each night, we would keep our eyes glued to our bedsides to make sure the monster didn't get the jump on us. But once we started developing our cynical adult brains, we started asking questions like, how do the monsters reproduce themselves, and how has the government not said anything about this? Once we realize how absurd the monster is, it only becomes less scary. I can say the same thing about bugs or haunted houses. After rationalizing these experiences, realizing I'm way more powerful than a bug and how a fear of ghosts is irrational, these scary things almost completely lose their edge. Another example that I believe captures this idea perfectly is the clown. Apparently, 1 in 10 adults report having a fear or phobia of clowns. With such a common fear, there must be something about clowns that makes them so scary. Is it something more about the idea of a clown, or is it just the appearance that makes them disturbing? Which got me to think, which clown do you think is scarier? The normal clown or the clown that was intentionally made to be scary? There is no objective answer, but I would say the normal clown is 10 times scarier than the scary clown. Their childish makeup, exaggerated painted on grins, and colorful clothing suggest that they are innocent and playful, but it causes you to wonder, what's below the surface? What are they really feeling right now? What's their true intentions? Who are they? They're like a spider camouflaged on a tree branch, or a piece of candy with a razor inside. This clown is scarier because it lets your mind do the work, leaves it up to your imagination, and allows your deepest fears and biases to fill the void. This is in deep contrast to the intentionally scary clown, which puts all you need to know on the table. He's crazy and totally wants to kill you. Again, they're certainly creepy, but definitely not scary. I think many horror writers today ignore the difference between scary and creepy, either because they are lazy or lack the skill to write such a difficult genre. No matter the reason, I think that the overflow of cheap horror films should make all horror fans feel insulted. I certainly do. The abundance of cheap horror movies is my main inspiration for this video. I'm tired of seeing these slasher writers spend as little as possible on their films and make millions of profit off of uninspired jump scares and gross out. I mean, it's easy to write a, creepy serial killer, or, ew, that's a lot of blood. Sure, it's creepy, but once the imagery is off screen, you probably feel more sick than frightened. As I said before, something truly scary has the exact opposite effect. When we first view something scary, we think we fully comprehend it and it seems benign. But only after thinking about it does the horror start to creep in. In other words, true horror isn't about the monster underneath your bed, but instead it gives a mirror to the monster inside of your head. Though you may be asking, if these cheap fear tactics like the scary clown aren't scary, then why do artists and writers create them? Well, I think this is due to a phenomenon which I would call the Higurashi effect. If you didn't know, Higurashi was once a beloved horror series because it had such a firm understanding of what made something scary. It would only use violence at the climax of a scene and answer just enough questions to keep your mind racing with the worst-case scenario theories. Just like the characters in the series, the writers injected paranoia in the audience by implanting strange coincidences and unsolved mysteries throughout the work. In other words, they gave a mirror to the monster inside of your head. Though in the latter half of the series, the show would almost abandon all of these principles and started relying on gore and slasher scenes instead of Higurashi's signature slow burn dread to engage the audience. It's like the writers noticed how scary their series was and said, oh yeah, you think that's scary? Look at this, and this. Just like the scary clown, they folded, put all their cards on the table, and taken the monster underneath your bed approach, instead of using the skill that it would take to bluff their hand. And not to spoil anything if you plan on watching Higurashi yourself, Like usual, once you understand the monster underneath the bed, it only gets less scary. In my opinion and many others, they should have just left the series in its former quality. Anyways, not to get off track, the main point that I want to make is that the Higurashi effect has turned one of the most complicated and creative genres into a gore fest only meant to grift money from gullible teens.
I will say on an indie level, I tend to take like a glass half full view, and I tend to always look for the positive when it comes to indie films. You can't compare an indie movie shot in 12 days for $10,000 to Justice League, whichever version you're talking about. You can't compare, because in my mind, there is no excuse for a studio to fail when they put out a blockbuster movie. You have no excuse.
Though, I don't just want this video to be completely negative. I want to give a spotlight to a good piece of horror. Later this month, I watched a short indie film called Portrait of God, produced by Dylan Clark, which I believe is a great example of what all great horror should look like. I've seen many indie horror films which use the same lame gimmicks that mainstream films use, but I was very happy to see that this video completely avoids them. I'm about to spoil the plot, but I strongly suggest that you still go watch the free video in the description. If you prefer, it's only about 6 minutes long, so you could even watch it now and come back if you want to experience it yourself. Though for the people still watching, I'll give you a short description of the film and point out each moment which shows you why this film is scary. So, this film starts off with our protagonist practicing for a college presentation on a famous abstract art piece. This painting is known as the Portrait of God, and it has gotten much attention because despite the fact that it's a completely black canvas, some people have reported seeing a divine figure in the darkness. Even more perplexing is that multiple people, when asked to describe the figure, gave the exact same account of its features. Features such as having a wide grin and being very skinny. The focus of the protagonist's presentation seems to be the question of why some people see the figure while others just see the black canvas. So far, what makes this setup so scary is how common yet obscure this experience is. I'm sure we've all witnessed strange phenomenon like the Mandela effect or deja vu, where we were terrified and fascinated by the strange coincidences of life. No matter who you are, even if you're the most uptight of skeptic, your mind may be able to rationalize these events, but it's about impossible to convince your body. The writer has done well making good use of real common human experiences to engage the audience. While the protagonist is rehearsing her presentation, she gets to the audience participation section and asks the audience if they can see the figure themselves. During this time, she takes a long pause to look at the painting. It almost seems like she's desperately begging for the figure to appear while she clutches her cross close to her chest. As we watch her stare intently and move closer towards the painting, we can almost make out a ghastly creature fading into the frame of the projector. Once the creature is completely visible, the protagonist runs out of the room to escape, but only to be trapped in a black abyss. Once she realizes that there is no place to run, she turns to God as her last hope of escape. She stands petrified with her eyes tightly closed, still gripping her cross firmly in her hand, and prays for God to save her. Though instead of God, the creature extends its hand out to her. At first, she looks terrified, though once in the creature's grasp, she is hypnotized by a holy light beaming out of the creature's wide mouth. After we see the light get brighter and brighter, the camera then cuts back to the protagonist, not in the abyss, but instead looking hopelessly into the inky blackness of the painting. Still holding her cross, but now so strongly that her hand has started to bleed. The camera shows us that the protagonist had been staring at the painting for hours. The film concludes with the protagonist still entranced by the painting, as we see her give a quick hopeful smile at the end. At the end of this film, I can see some people saying this is just another artsy indie film, and that this was more of a pretty art piece than something scary. The monster wasn't scary, and the scenes weren't that intense. Though to those people, I want you to remember what I said earlier. Something truly scary is something we think we fully comprehend, but only after closer inspection does the horror seep in. The horror of this film lies in the underlying message it's trying to convey. Let me ask you, what do you see in this painting? Some may say they see God, though smart boys like you and me will just call it as it is. A black canvas likely painted by a pretentious artist looking to make lots of money off of gullible rich people. Sure. Though let me ask you this. What do you see in this painting? Some may say God, and perhaps even you too. I'm sure you see where I'm going. That's what makes this film so scary. It makes us think about the ultimate horror, looking for meaning in a meaningless world. And just like how the woman stared hopelessly at the black painting, many of us look at the pitch black universe devoid of meaning and swear we see something too. To summarize, we thought the black canvas was nothing, but now we understand it's a mirror showing our deepest insecurity, or insignificance. Once benign, now terrifying, blah blah blah, you get the point. Anyways, I think there's no excuse for mainstream films with their huge budgets. Can I speak, bro? With their huge budgets to make cheap horror films, when a group of friends can make a masterpiece and post it online for free. I don't blame the artists and writers, of course, because I know it's rarely their fault. These studios are businesses after all, and why waste money producing a thoughtful critique of human nature when you can make big money off of Michael Myers sequels? So yeah, that's my piece. I hope you got something meaningful out of this video, and stay tuned for my other projects if you enjoyed this one. See you next time.